The Gospel of Matthew. The Olivet Discourse 2. Matthew 24:29-51. Introduction. 1. In our previous lesson, we covered the first half of Matthew 24. A. Commonly called the Olivet Discourse, since Jesus was on the Mount of Olives when he delivered it. B. A challenging passage of Scripture, believed to discussing 1. The destruction of Jerusalem, which occurred in 70 AD. 2. The second coming of Christ, which is yet to occur. 3. Or both events, described either in turn or intertwined. 2. I've proposed the entire chapter foretells the destruction of Jerusalem, based first upon the setting leading up to the discourse, which includes A. Jesus' words spoken in the temple. 1. His parables about Israel's rejection of him. Matthew 21:28-32, 33-46, 22:1-14. 2. His condemnation of the scribes and Pharisees. Matthew 23:27-36. 3. His lamentation over Jerusalem. Matthew 23:37-39. B. Jesus' prophecy spoken about the temple. Matthew 24:1-2. C. The questions of the disciples, which when Mark and Luke's account are considered, appear to be 1. When will these things be? 2. What will be the sign when all these things will be fulfilled? Matthew 24:3, Mark 13:4, Luke 21:7, 3. We saw that in verses 4-29, Jesus describes A. What will not be the sign other than the gospel preached to all nations? Matthew 24:4-14. B. What will be the sign? Matthew 24:15. 1. The abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel. Daniel 9:26-27. 2. Which Luke explains to be Jerusalem surrounded by armies. Luke 21:20. C. What to do when they saw the sign. Matthew 24:16-28. 1. Those in Judah were to flee to the mountains to avoid a great tribulation. 2. They were not to be misled by false Christs or false prophets. But immediately after the oppression of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky. Then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. He will send out his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his chosen ones from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other. Matthew 24:29-31. Now from the fig tree learn this parable. When its branch has now become tender, and puts forth its leaves, you know that the summer is near. Even so you also, when you see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Matthew 24:32-33. Most assuredly I tell you, this generation will not pass away, until all these things are accomplished. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But no one knows of that day and hour, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Matthew 24:34-36. As the days of Noah were, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days which were before the flood they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark. Matthew 24:37-38. And they didn't know until the flood came, and took them all away, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and one will be left. 2 women grinding at the mill, one will be taken and one will be left. Matthew 24:39-41. Watch therefore, for you don't know in what hour your Lord comes. But know this, that if the master of the house had known in what watch of the night the thief was coming, he would have watched, and would not have allowed his house to be broken into. Matthew 24:42-43. Therefore also be ready, for in an hour that you don't expect, the Son of Man will come. Who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord has set over his household, to give them their food in due season? Blessed is the servant whom his Lord finds doing so when he comes. Most assuredly I tell you that he will set him over all that he has. But if that evil servant should say in his heart, My Lord is delaying his coming, Matthew 24:44-48, and begins to beat his fellow servants, and eat and drink with the drunken, the Lord of that servant will come in a day when he doesn't expect it, and in an hour when he doesn't know it, and will cut him in pieces, and appoint his portion with the hypocrites. There is where the weeping and grinding of teeth will be. Matthew 24:49-51. 2. The Olivet Discourse continued. D. What will happen next? 1. Events to occur immediately after the tribulation of those days. A. Cosmic disturbances. Matthew 24:29. 1. The sun will be darkened. 2. The moon will not give its light. 3. The stars will fall from heaven. 4. The heavens will be shaken. B. The sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. Matthew 24:30. 1. All the tribes of the earth will mourn. 2. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. C. The elect will be gathered. Matthew 24:31. 1. For with a great sound of the trumpet, angels will be sent. 2. They shall gather the elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to another. 2. Such events certainly sound like the second coming of Christ, but consider two reasons why they may not be referring to Jesus coming at the last day. A. The events were to occur immediately after the tribulation of those days, in those days, after that tribulation. Matthew 24:29, Mark 13:24. 1. They are connected in time to the tribulation described in Matthew 24:15-28. 2. This coming of Jesus was to occur at the conclusion of the siege of Jerusalem. B. The events are similar to those used to foretell God's judgment of other nations. 1. Babylon. Isaiah 13:1-6-13. 2. Egypt. Isaiah 19:1-2. Ezekiel 32:2-7-9. 3. Tyre. Isaiah 23:1. 24:21-23. 4. Edom. Isaiah 34:4-6. 5. Nineveh. Nahum 1:1-5. 6. Israel. Amos 8:9. 7. Judah. Jeremiah 4:5-6 and 23-28. 3. For such reasons, I suggest that even in Matthew 24:29-31, A. Jesus refers to the destruction of Jerusalem. B. Like other Jewish prophets, Jesus uses figurative language to depict 1. The judgment to befall the wicked in terms of worldwide destruction. 2. The provision made for the righteous in terms of the gathering by angels. C. Jewish prophets foretold God's judgment upon such nations. 1. Using figures of worldwide destruction, even though the judgment was local. 2. Perhaps because such judgments foreshadow God's final judgment to come upon the entire world at the last day. E. Admonitions to be prepared and productive. 1. The parable of the fig tree. Matthew 24:32-33. A. New branches and leaves indicate summer is near. B. When you see these things, Jerusalem surrounded by armies, the time is near. 2. It would happen before this generation passed away. Matthew 24:34. A. Some define generation as a race of people, the Jews. McGarvey, B.W. Johnson. B. But note its use by Jesus just prior to this discourse. Matthew 23:33-36, especially 36. The destruction of Jerusalem came to pass within 40 years. 3. The words of Jesus will come to pass. Matthew 24:35. A. Heaven and earth shall pass away one day. 2 Peter 3:7-10. B. But Jesus' words will by no means pass away. With verse 35, some believe Jesus now talks about the second coming, but Jesus is using an illustration to demonstrate the surety of his words. Matthew 5:18. 4. Of that day and hour, only the Father knows. Matthew 24:36. A. They might discern the general timing with the advance of armies toward Jerusalem. B. But the day and hour when the siege would begin, only the Father knew. So don't delay when the sign appears, Jerusalem surrounded by armies. 5. It will be like the days of Noah. Matthew 24:37-39. A. In the days before the flood. 1. Noah knew what was coming and was preparing, but people continued with their normal activities. 2. Only when it was too late did the people know. B. Prior to the siege of Jerusalem. 1. Many people probably thought the conflict would end peacefully, and so lived their lives accordingly. 2. But once the siege began, it was too late. 6. Some will be taken away. Matthew 24:40-41. A. When the city was stormed, 97,000 Jews were taken captive. B. Some to be killed by beasts in Roman theatres, some sent to work in Egypt, others sold as slaves. Flavius Josephus, Jewish Wars, as quoted in Barnes' commentary on Matthew. 7. Therefore, watch. Matthew 24:42-44. A. You don't know the hour of the Son of Man's coming. B. Don't be caught off guard, like the master of a house who did not know when a thief would break in. C. Be ready, for the Son of Man will come when you not expect him. The siege of Jerusalem might begin promptly, so flee Judah quickly when you see the armies surrounding Jerusalem. 8. The parable of the faithful servant and the wicked servant. Matthew 24:45-51. A. The faithful servant is blessed if doing the master's will when he comes. B. So the disciples of Jesus are admonished to be productive. Conclusion. 1. Admittedly, there is much in the Olivet Discourse that alludes to our Lord's second coming at the last day. A. But that is no different than the prophecies by other Jewish prophets who foretold God's judgment upon other nations. B. It was a common motif used by Jewish prophets. We should not be surprised to see Jesus using the same. And rightly so, for God's judgments upon nations in the past are types and shadows of the final judgment to befall the entire world when Jesus comes again. 2. In addition to the setting leading up to the discourse, there is the natural flow of the discourse itself that leads me to conclude it is entirely about the destruction of Jerusalem. A. Jesus' disciples are told what will not be the sign. Matthew 24:1-14. B. They are told will be the sign that his coming is near. Matthew 24:15. C. They are told what to do when they see the sign. Matthew 24:16-28. D. His coming in judgment, the fall of Jerusalem, is described in terms reminiscent of other Jewish prophets who foretold of God's judgments upon various nations. Matthew 24:29-31. Admonitions are given for them to be prepared and productive in the meantime. Matthew 24:32-51. So I view the Olivet Discourse to describe a local, escapable judgment which occurred as Jesus foretold in 70 AD. However, there is still the worldwide, inescapable judgment at the last day. 1 Thessalonians 5:2-3, 2 Thessalonians 1:7-10, 2 Peter 3:10-12. Are you ready for that day? The admonitions to be prepared and productive are very similar. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. Therefore, since all these things will be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness, looking for and hastening the coming of the day of God, because of which the heavens will be dissolved, being on fire, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. Therefore, beloved, looking forward to these things, be diligent to be found by him in peace, without spot and blameless. 2 Peter 3:10-14. The end. The Gospel of Matthew. The Olivet Discourse 2. Matthew 24:29-51.